Hey, what's up, everybody? This is GameLogIQ from the Rounding Off Infinity Gaming channel on YouTube. One of the co-hosts of the Enough to Keep Going Weekly Games podcast on the E2KG Network podcasting channel on YouTube, back with another episode of the Enough to Keep Going Weekly Games podcast. This is episode number 343 for the evening of 23 June 2024. Here with me, as most times, although we have a repeat week of a surprise, I have with me my stalwart co-host in crime, starting with Mr. DBQ Hams. How you doing, DBQ?
I'm glad to be your co-host in crime. I'm glad to be here. Lots to talk about this week.
And making his appearance for 2 weeks in a row, Mr. Swissguard. How you doing, Swiss?
Pretty good. Excited about Nintendo Direct chat.
Very cool, very cool. So without much further ado, let's get to it. First on the rundown tonight in our segment one, our gamer experience discussion. I'll start things off with a little game called Megacopter, Blades of the Goddess. So this is a indie title that was shown, the first time I saw it, I think the first time it was revealed was at the Indie Game Showcase, I think back in April or May. And so definitely a game that kind of gives off and evokes, I'll just spool forward here a little bit on the video, gives off Desert Strike kind of vibes. And so that was kind of why it caught my eye. Was very super interested in this game when it first made its appearance. I really like the controls of the game. It's kind of got just a tad bit of drift on the helicopter, and so it kind of, be a person who plays a ton of flight sims all the time, it definitely kind of gives you just enough of those variances kind of in the flight model for you to be able to kind of feel that you're not, just flying an aircraft or something that doesn't really care about the helicopter flight model. I think, unfortunately, the thing that kind of mars my experience right now is the difficulty level. And it's not, I really try and stray away from, this notion of like a game is too hard. I was talking earlier this week when we were talking about Elden Ring on the Basement Radio Arcade podcast, and I talked a little bit about, kind of why I tend to not like Souls games. And it's not simply like the difficulty level, it's what the grind loop is like. And that loop has to be rewarding for it to be difficult. There are, Spider-Man 2 is not a hard game, right? But there are some boss battles that are not just like bubblegum easy. But, there's, for when you're in those fights, you feel like you're just at the cusp of like pulling it off. And you're kind of rewarded, right, for trying different tactics, right? There are things that work better, and it's like a Jenga puzzle, right? Eventually you figure it out. This is a game, and this is what I don't like, is when things are a matter of difficulty based on, how do I want to say it? Just based on, bullet density in the sky, and kind of, making things so busy that you really don't have enough time in a live action do loop to really figure out, right, what it is you're supposed to do. So, the first thing I'll go through, because everything was going really well with this game up until I hit the first boss battle, and here I'm fighting the first boss. And this is a great example. Now, part of the problem here was me, and so as you see me going around the screen, I apologize for our audio listeners, but there's just several. I mean, look at these attacks that the boss is pulling off. So, the first thing is in the two mistakes I made was, first of all, the only part on him that's vulnerable, and he's off screen right now, is the brain, which sits like on the back of like the turtle shell. But part of the reason why I made that mistake is because the game gives you cues that make you believe that that's not the case. And even though I've seen that posted like in the Steam forums, I don't necessarily know that person's absolutely correct, because while I'm hitting him kind of at like the base of the neck, I could see him sapping some damage right on his life bar at the top. So I don't know that the brain might be where it causes more damage. So I'll just have to kind of go back and see. But as you saw on the screen there, like the other part of the problem is as you get kind of pushed around the screen as he fills up the sky with like the bullet density, there are towers on the screen that you can blow them up to regain like health and ammo, but those towers also emit electricity. So once you're in vicinity of the towers, you're taking damage, right? So he fills the sky with bullets. He launches airborne drones, and then when you're in the vicinity of the towers, you get sapped damage also. Now, the other mistake that I made that would have definitely made this boss battle easier is I played the tutorial, but somewhere in the tutorial I missed that the cannon on the helo, firing it in air mode is the left trigger and firing it in ground mode is the right trigger. So it's on two different triggers, which I'll have to go back and study I've spent a lot of time in helo simulations with like the AH-64 Apache and other helos, and I'm pretty sure like there's only one cannon trigger. So I probably just like overthought it and duped myself out of that. But that would have probably allowed me to take out the airborne drones, which would have definitely made this easier. But there's the curve on difficulty went from totally manageable to like this boss battle, which is the first boss battle, which is about maybe the fourth mission in the game, to just kind of off the charts. And I actually spent probably like an hour trying to beat this. And then I think put the game down and then walked away and came back. And I think I was able to beat it, or maybe I beat it at the end of like the 1 hour session, just like total like blind luck. I don't know if the screen is going to switch. It doesn't. So
as you're flying around those towers,
yeah,
when you blow them up, are you taking splash damage from them as well? It looked like you were getting hit as it was like you're hovering above them.
Yeah, you may have been. I was kind of hoping that that when I blew them up, that the drones that were in the vicinity of the explosion were taking damage. But I haven't had a chance to actually verify that. But if they were taking damage, it's very possible that I was also taking damage too. So that's through about the first like 6 missions or so. I've also seen in a write-up that there's before that boss battle, there was a mission that I had completed before that was like a tower defense mission where you get like waves in kind of horde mode coming in. And as you complete each progressive wave, like these beings show up that are supposed to help you like defend this building that you're defending. They are virtually useless. Somehow I wound up completing that. I think what happened was because that building was down to like its last like little tiny tidbit of health, and I think I just happened to like kill the last person in the last wave, like right before. It was like a concurrent kill. Like the game just scored and registered like the defense of the building, before it went down. But so that last boss battle, the game, like there's kind of like sections of the map, and there's like, I don't know, maybe 6 stages per section. So now I'm onto the second section of the map. So this is mission about 7 or 8. But you see here, I'm like caught in between like 3 towers that are like spinning, like spitting bullets. And then where I don't like where I can see where the game is scaling in difficulty, that tells me that, again, this is right now, this is a manageable mission for me, right? But where I can tell the game is going, like, see these little ground troops. These little ground troops, like in the first stage, were firing like 1 bullet, like at a time. But now it's gone up to like 2, 3, or 4, right? And they're just filling the sky with that density. And then there are ground troops with rocket launchers, and their fire rates also increases. So I can just see that as this thing goes on, like as I've hit points of frustration already in like my first few hours playing, I can also see that it's going to scale to like ridiculous levels. And this is the kind of game that to me is representative of like an arcade game, like in the 1980s, that was designed to like take your quarters. And I could tell. Right, that I'm going to hit a point where I'm going to be like, nobody's got time for that. So, but I think this is a game done by one developer. It does have its moments of fun. I think, I don't know that this game is going to particularly sell very well. It'll be interesting as there's more uptake on it and gets some more literature written about it in community forums and stuff. So maybe some people will start figuring this stuff out. I've seen a couple people who have finished the game and fought it all the way through. So, I mean, it has its moments of fun, but then it has its moments of like deep frustration. And so it's just a matter of kind of seeing exactly how that's going to pan out.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely seems like it's striking I had heard about it before in that Desert Strike type of vein. It certainly feels like late 80s, early 90s type of play style, as you said, like with the arcade aspect of it. Looking up Pizza Bear Games, which is the developer, I can't see. This looks like it's their first project. How many people are on that studio? I couldn't see in the quick search. But yeah, like I can see why it would be, as a retro fan, I could totally see where it would be intriguing, but I could also see where I could play a demo of it and feel satisfied and feel like I could see the horizon of that frustration that you were talking about as well.
Yeah, and I was thinking before the show, what this gives off to me too is it gives off like Doom Eternal vibes, right? And like look, if we're headed for some Marauder kind of mess, like we're not doing that. So is this a demo that you tried out? Because this was up during Steam Next Fest TBQ, and I wonder if this came across your radar.
No, it didn't. I mean, I saw it. I remember I read something about it, but I never played the demo. I watched a couple of videos and kind of it fell back off my radar. So when you have it on your list today, I was kind of excited to hear about it. So
yeah, it's very much a golf swing kind of game, right? It's like when I make that reference here on the show, like that's my reference to you're a horrible golfer and you're a horrible golfer, but that one time in 18 holes that you hit that like sweet right swing off the tee, like you tell yourself, oh, I can do that again. No matter if I have to swing 1,000 times, I can do that again. And you play for that one moment in time in 1,000, right? That you hit that sweet off the tee.
Yeah, I was gonna ask what like the hook was for you to like keep you wanting to potentially like invest a little bit more time in it. So
because it's very much like if you've ever played like a Halo flight sim, they're incredibly challenging, right? And some people laugh at me when I've talked about why I think there's this theoretical limit of the number of people who are going to play console type games, right? Who put a controller in their hand and like take on that paradigm and get comfortable with it. Flying a Halo is, and the reason I say this is because human beings have a maximum cognitive load that they can handle, right? Of numerous things going on at the same time that they could possibly keep track of in these little like microservice kind of timers and clocks in their head, right? And there's a loop for each of them, right? Check your pedal, check your altitude, check your speed, check your velocity, right? In whichever direction, right? Check your altitude, and so flying a Halo is a very like the number of those microservice clocks going in your head at a time is increased significantly over, I think, even just flying a fixed wing aircraft. And then compare that to like, driving a car, driving a racing vehicle, that type of thing. And so it's amazingly satisfying when like you get it, right? Like you're tracking all those timers and you're keeping up with it, and then you engage in combat. And you flick a switch, light off the right system, have to pull ECM, all that kind of stuff. Take down a tank, etc. And so there's moments in this that, again, this isn't quite at that complexity, but there are moments where it skates very close to that feeling. Moments where you're pinwheeling around a target, and because see, one of the things you do is you have individual control in each of the different directions, but your gun turret is on a separate control. So you're flying the aircraft with the left stick, rotating the direction of the turret with the right stick. And so there are moments in time where that whole thing where you're pinwheeling around a target, you're slewing the gun turret, you're cutting in between like this hail of bullets that's coming at you, dodging, inbound artillery, that type of stuff. There's those moments that there's a completely like wonderful dopamine like satisfying feeling, and that's the hook. That and the golf swing, right? Because as I'm flying this mission, which I wasn't able to complete, there's both a sweetness and a frustration in that moment where you fail a mission, but like I failed this mission with a sliver of health left at the last tower. Like there's 3 towers you have to take down, and I had almost taken down the 3rd tower. And so there's multiple kind of exercises you have to get through to do that, right? You have to find the tower, right? In the upper right hand corner here, there's a mini map with a fog of war effect. So part of it is just incrementally searching and feeling out the map. They've got drones up, and so their alert goes up, the longer they're in contact with you. So it's managing there's several resource loops in this that you're managing. You're managing battle space, you're managing airspace, you're managing the detect to engage sequence, trying to find and locate like the different high value targets that you're trying to track. So each of those is kind of a mini game in your head, right, as you're going through it. And so there's satisfaction as you incrementally get through each of those. But it's always a matter of, where is that going to land, right? Is the increment of fun that is there, going to stay just ahead of the bow wave of frustration, or is that bow wave of frustration going to catch up? So that is Megacopter. Just came out this Friday, I think, June 21st. So we will see how that goes.
It'll be interesting. I mean, one of the things I've noticed over the years with indie small studio games like this is that they'll continue to get patches for a significant amount of time, or that they'll, sometimes that patch will tweak difficulty or enemy density, or it's going to add in another mode for accessibility. There are things that potentially in 6 months from now, it becomes a more approachable game. But I think it seems to hit the bar that it's going for in terms of that reminiscence of that time period, both stylistically and challenge wise. But yeah, that doesn't always make it fun. It just means it achieved what its goals were. So
yeah, and I think the game, I mean, that callback to nostalgia, the game controls way better than I can remember Desert Strike ever controlling.
That's that's the thing. And maybe it's because we were only playing it. I only played it on a gamepad, which was terrible to play a game like that on. So
yeah, and lots of people played it on I can't remember exactly what computer systems it was on, but just played it like on a mouse and keyboard, VIC-20 keyboard or whatever. I'll say the last thing about the frustration too is, even there's a toggle you can hit to supposedly reduce difficulty that gives you like additional armor, and it's supposed to replenish your weapons. Now, when you tell me you're going to replenish my weapons, what that tells me is that like I'm going to get unlimited ammo, but it's not unlimited ammo. So like you hit that toggle and you still run out of missiles. And I'm like, okay, well, what was the point in that? So it'll be interesting to see how it goes. But DBQ, now I see this title here. And I want to make sure, is this I was playing an indie thing. This is you playing a mainstream thing?
No, so this is also an indie studio. This is Super Pixel Games. So they made a couple years ago, they made Legend Bowl, which was kind of a NFL. It is a north-south type of field progression. It feels, if you played kind of 16-bit football games, it feels very much in that vein. It's pixelated, and the Legend Bowl came out on consoles last summer. There's a demo out there, and this is College Bowl. This is was in development for the past. I mean, it was announced about a year ago that they were working on it, and it's got a pretty deep college roster with just kind of skirting the lines of it is going to call a school. It's going to make allusions to where it's from, and the mascot, without necessarily hitting a NCAA type of liability issue. It does already. The mod scene for the NFL one is pretty strong with a lot there. Even it's only came out this past week, and it already has some images up of people. There's one mod out there that brings in all your D1 schools with logos and names. It has built into it you could load a roster for all the D2 schools, or you can load a roster that comes a little closer to accurate. That it gives your state, or like Purdue, it calls pursue, right? And so it skirts it there, so you would at least have a sense of who that is trying to represent. But again, the football aspect of it is. This is a nice segue from Megacopter to College Bowl, is that there are what I'm learning is 10 years of Madden muscle memory is tough to break in terms of which buttons do what, or the timing on a pass. The way you pass is you hold down the button or you tap it for a lob pass, which is similar to Madden, but you have a green little bar that fills up as you're holding down the button just above, or starts off below the quarterback. There's a setting to bring it above the quarterback, which is actually, I found, more helpful in terms of visually seeing it. I've been playing it on the Steam Deck, runs great on the Steam Deck. But again, it's a little small. So having that icon, having that bar up, but that bar fills pretty quickly. So the amount of time that you would hold down in a Madden for a bullet pass is probably twice as long as you would hold this down. So it's a much faster rhythm, and passing is challenging. It's got a couple different settings. You could play arcade setting. You could play a simcade, which is kind of a mixture of simulation and arcade. And then you have a full on kind of sim setting where everything is tweaked based on the player's numbers. So, but it is, the running game is good. The defense is solid. It plays a good game of like 16-bit football on the field. And then the College Bowl aspect of it is you have a number of different facilities. You have academic facilities, training facilities, scouts, and that, every week you get a certain amount of money, depending on if you win or if you don't. That varies, and you can invest in different things. And so investing in your scouts will increase maybe by 10% or 20%. That if you can tell if somebody's a boom or a bust, or that it will make your scouts more likely to have accurate readings of who they're scouting. Most of the off seasons, most of the recruiting pieces seem to happen in the off season. So I'm not that far yet. I've been reading on the Discord and on Reddit around kind of what the off season looks like, but you're recruiting, you're making recruiting offers. You have prestige, you have rankings for your school. So you have prestige, you have academics, you have facilities, you have media. And so depending on what somebody is looking for, again, if they're looking for, playing for a highly academic school or a school close to family, that impacts their recruiting aspect. So definitely I was, the fact that it's coming out a month before EA's kind of full-fledged college football 25, but it also is, it's perfect on the deck, right? It is really nice to have just a quick pickup. I spent most of a rainy day yesterday sitting on the couch playing hours of college football, and which works. There is that, just like you were saying, that that golf swing moment of completing a pass after not getting the timing down, or being able to start reading defenses better. All the things that a football game gives you. But because it's a different engine, because it's it is running a little differently, my brain is relearning what I can jump into a Madden football game year after year and have for the last decade, and feel relatively confident about what I'm doing and what I'm supposed to be doing. And so there's a little bit of relearning here, but it's a lot of fun. It's scheduled to come to consoles as well. When Legend Bowl came to consoles, it came to all three. It's not necessarily the file size is under a gig, so it is not a resource heavy game, but it plays a good game of football. And having something in terms of the recruiting aspects and college football pieces, once I can maybe I'll play around in the mod scene. It has nice Steam Workshop support for the NFL version, so I would assume over time it's going to have something similar here as well. And that's College Bowl by Super Pixel Games.
Okay, and was that? I mean, so just is it as far as content, like what the gameplay loop is? Is it lean more Madden or does it lean more Football Manager?
Oh, it's more Madden. I mean, it is you are playing the game. Like the hours I spent mainly were in game. Like there's a little bit to do in between weeks. It is not it's not out of the park baseball kind of spreadsheet graphics. I mean, there are college football games out there like that, all the way back to like front office football back in the early 2000s. But this is very much a game where it is your ability to win on the field is both a combination of your team makeup and players, but also your own skill level.
And was that mostly the hook? Was like you were looking for something to kind of have in portable format, but also to kind of get the gears going for the ramp up to NCAA?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, last year when Retro College Bowl came out on, this is the New Star developer that did Retro Goal and Retro Bowl. They did a college version as well, and I sunk 20 some seasons into that. The difference of kind of college recruiting and how that works, and which is a whole different aspect, there we go, from what you get with an NFL or even any professional sports team. That playing a college team, you've got recruiting and you're kind of churning over people every 4 to 5 years versus managing cap space. It's a different kind of strategy level there. So and I always enjoy a good kind of sports management game. So and I think in some ways I bounced off of Legend Bowl because of the gameplay, that it was a little more challenging. But the college aspect of it gives me a reason to kind of invest a little bit more in having a Steam Deck, which means it's easy to just kind of pick up, play a game, set it back down, rather than kind of boot up something big.
Very cool.
I saw in the like some of the Steam highlights, they have like snow and everything. Does it do a good job of like affecting the gameplay when you're?
I haven't played enough to know. I guess that's in the rain. Your passing feels a little sloppier, so I would guess snow would be similar. The running game, it's not like you're making tight cuts, so I haven't necessarily noticed the difference there.
I always like seeing like old school 16-bit like snow or something, because it's just nice to see like what artists can do when they have a limited like a limited box to play with.
Right. I think the art design here really carries it nicely, that it is a strong kind of late 16-bit era type of thing.
All right, at this point in the show, I want to give a shout out to everybody in the chat. Warwana and Innate have come through, so appreciate you guys as always. Swiss, did you have any more other questions on college football?
Nope, I'm good, thanks.
So you have been playing something that I think features tonight from the Nintendo Direct. Is that accurate, or is this a different demo that you've been playing?
I think it's a different demo. I don't recall it being in the Direct, but it continues the theme of like our GX stories kind of being set spiritually in the 1990s. So I played some Metal Slug Tactics a couple of weeks ago. They released a demo. This is a game that I've had wishlisted for a long time. I don't remember when it got announced. How many?
It was at least a year, probably more. Is it still coming out this fall?
Yes. So they're the pop up and everything is like, we're coming out in the fall and let us know if there are bugs or whatever. But so I picked up I guess it was only available as a demo for like a week or something, and they extended the demo another week. So I picked that up, and I was actually pleasantly surprised. So it's you know, I think I was really excited about Advance Wars for the Switch when they announced that, and then it took a while for that to come out. And then when I finally did pick it up, I was a little bit underwhelmed. This one, um, I don't know. I always enjoy like the thought of tactics games, and then I kind of always get annoyed when they actually come out. Well, there was another one for the Switch a while back, Enter the Breach or something like that. That was another one where I like picked it up, was excited to play it, and then felt underwhelmed. But so I was pleasantly surprised with Metal Slug Tactics, even though it's like a kind of like a like switching genres on like a you know a classic IP. So the first thing is like it just has that cool 16 like Super Nintendo era like style that like that's good. Um, but as far as the gameplay is concerned, I played a few missions. Um, Initially, I actually lost some characters in like the first battle. Like you go through the tutorial, then you play a battle, and then you start like getting into the game. And so I think my tactics were poor. Um, and then somebody, I think a few other people had said in like the Steam community page talking about how like you can't play it like you would play some other tactics games. Like you're not going to be methodical and slow about it. Like you have to play it as like Metal Slug. So you're running, you have to run and gun even though it's a tactics game. And now that you know, and then they mention like one of the features that they emphasize in the tutorial, which I should have paid more attention to. But as you move, like there's areas on the map with like structures that provide cover. They give you defense, but as you move, you also I forget what they call the attribute, but like you basically are harder to hit, and it so as you're moving around the map from cover to cover, you're increasing your defense and you're reducing like literally it just reduces damage that you take. So you can't kind of like position yourself and wait. You have to move around. And the more you move, like the farther you move, the more those attributes get amped up. So it's not just a little bit, you're like running around the map. And combine like the one piece that like really jumped out to me initially too, that from a tactics perspective that I like and enjoy in these types of games is if you have an enemy lined up between like two of your characters, and hit one with your primary weapon, and it's in range and everything for your your teammate's primary weapon, whether they've already completed their movement and action or not, they'll do a sync and they get another hit on them. So moving around the map, making sure your characters can get double hits on all the enemies makes it pretty satisfying from a tactical perspective. One of the characters, like they have like they throw grenades, and if they sink, they can move again. So like you can do it. You can set up a sync. They can hit it, and then they can move and get prepped for like the next round of what you're gonna do. Because in a similar fashion to Megacopter, there are a lot of enemies. There's a lot more on the map, and they do attack you with a little bit more effectiveness, at least in that initial non-tutorial battle than I was expecting. The second battle, there's like a tower with like artillery in it, and you can't dodge the artillery. Like it shows like, oh, you're being targeted. I'm like, okay, I'll move out of the little red zone. Well, no, the red zone follows you. You're gonna get hit. You will get hit by the artillery, and it will take out half your life unless you're properly moving around. And then it really reduces the impact. So,
that's really interesting from a tactics piece, right? Like, because most
yeah.
of the time you think about tactics as like the equivalent of a chess match, that you're moving things around. You're thinking about positioning, whether that's Overwatch, whether that's, I mean, Overwatch in terms of like XCOM, or like hitting from the back from Final Fantasy Tactics and those types of ways. But what you're describing feels like It makes me, I mean, it feels like it is staying true to the Metal Slug series in terms of like the intensity of the action on the screen and kind of holding that in a tactical manner.
Right. The tactics are still there. Like your units have like passive effects and stuff, and I've already seen some like, you know, getting bonuses if you're doing like elevation wise and all that. So like your classic, you know, tactics, uh like in like a Final Fantasy Tactics kind of way type stuff. I haven't gone very far, so I don't know like what kind of skill trees develop or anything like that. And I know like you have, I didn't even talk about the adrenaline. Like, so as you move around, your adrenaline pumps up, and then you can do like a call in an airstrike or something, which is fun. But yeah, that was an unexpected uh, wrinkle that really made me want to keep playing. So
Very cool. So, I'm sorry, Swiss. You're playing this on PC? So this is a game.
Yeah,
this is a demo that's up on Steam.
yeah, it's on Steam. So
Okay.
I guess another one of those games that would probably fit very, very well on a Steam Deck. So I think the demo is only available till like the 27th or something though, and then it says it's Q4 2024 is the planned release date. So it's a timed demo, June 27th.
Okay. Well, very cool. Let's go ahead and step over to segment 2 and talk about the news. First story up over on the PlayStation blog, PlayStation Store, May 2024's top downloads. It's time to see which PS5, PS4, PSVR2, PSVR, and free-to-play games topped the download charts last month. F124 is off to the races in May's PS5 list by entering the top 3 of most downloads in the EU region, because Europeans love their racing. With Sea of Thieves ascending the list in both the US and EU regions, the PSVR 2 list saw new release Madison VR enter the fray of most downloads in May. Main story, that's the tail of the tape on this, is on the US list. Sea of Thieves is at the top, an Xbox published game. Madden, Call of Duty, Modern Warfare 3, Helldivers 2 comes in at number 4. GTA still making the list. NBA, MLB The Show 24 in the top of the list, so that's always good to see. Stellar Blade, a platform exclusive, showing up there. Fallout 4 off the resurgence of the television show, so that's good to see. And now Xbox published game, Xbox owned game, making it onto the PlayStation charts. Who's Your Daddy? I don't know what that one is. Rainbow Six Siege, Grounded, another Xbox title. Another Crab's Treasure, which is an indie game. Marvel Spider-Man 2, platform exclusive coming in on the top of the charts. Rise of the Ronin, also coming into the charts, another platform exclusive. Assassin's Creed Mirage, good to see Ubisoft, with a title that they call their smaller version, although I would say that game is significantly bigger than, say, something like Prince of Persia. But good to see it coming in. And Elden Ring making it into the top 20 on the chart as well, probably from people getting amped up in preparation for the DLC coming out. I am not going to go over the PS4 games, the PSVR 2 games, and so on and so forth. So, gentlemen, anything on that list that kind of struck out and surprised you on the PlayStation list?
So, Who's Your Daddy is it's a streaming game to some degree. Somebody's playing the baby and somebody's the dad, and you're kind of wandering around. I think the McElroys made it, had some good internet content with it probably 5-6 years ago at this point when they were over at Polygon. When I saw this list, I dug around a little bit in GameLogIQ. I don't know if you know, because I couldn't find an answer. Downloads, these are not the top purchases of the year, of the month. These are what has been downloaded. So if I have purchased previously GTA 5, but have blown it off my system for storage space and re-download it, does it get counted in this list?
That, I don't know. That could be possible, but I feel like that occurrence still puts it kind of in the noise. And so the way I've always looked at this list is when you say most downloads, to me, what that's always differentiated has been, regardless of whether or not a game is paid or free, these are the top downloads. So, it might strike out at you as then unusual that say Fortnite isn't in this list. So I don't know if re-downloads count. The way I've always looked at it is I've just always looked at it as, hey, when a game shows that it's the most downloaded, and that game is a paid game, that to me says something significant, right? Because it means that people paid for that. So there could be some chicanery in here potentially.
Yeah, because it's got to be paid games because there's nothing on here like Fortnite's not. Genshin Impact isn't there. I'm looking at this list and don't see really any free games on here as well. So again, I think it's a good snapshot of traffic. I was just trying to look for some clarity in the data.
No, that's a good point. It could be triggering off of transaction logs right out of their out of the fintech part of their system. So, yeah. So I am not sure. I guess what I've always looked at is for this as a kind of a precursor of kind of what I would expect to chart on NPD as a result of the revenue that's indicative is being generated. It's kind of like the Golden Globes, I guess, if you want, of the upcoming NPDs.
Yeah, I think and the US side for PlayStation 5, the ones that stand out for me are the ones that I know hit below $15 sale over the last few weeks. Like Madden was down to $14, NBA 2K was down to 24, was down to $10 for the base edition. Fallout was really cheap for a while as well, and all things kind of. So those feel like I can see why older pieces are coming up higher in that list than some of the newer releases or those that have ongoing communities to the degree of Modern Warfare, Helldivers, things like that.
Well, yeah, then that stands out at you too, right? As a matter of what the tail that's going on, right, for a previously released game that's still being sold, often typically at full price. So you've got Modern Warfare 3, Helldivers 2, and Grand Theft Auto, right, sitting up there in the list. So it's just a data point, interesting to see as a potential indicator of what people on PlayStation are playing.
I just keep coming back to like Sea of Thieves and Skull and Bones being announced at the same E3, and it's like here we are in 2024, and Sea of Thieves is topping the charts on a console after such a long, successful run on Xbox, and Skull and Bones is struggling to develop a following. So.
Yeah, but I don't know how much of a struggle, right, in terms of kind of what Ubisoft's internal metrics are for it. It's I guess my feeling is that it's not struggling so badly that Ubisoft has abandoned it, right? They're putting the standard Ubisoft full court press behind it. So that to me, for a game that was in development hell for as long as it was, is a impressive feat. That they stuck with it for that long. We'll see how it goes. DBQ, you have the first of unfortunately our studio shutdown news for tonight's podcast.
Yes, so mine is Pieces Interactive. So Pieces Interactive most recently released the Alone in the Dark remake earlier this year in 2024, which kind of seemed to slide under the radar of most people, including myself. But Pieces Interactive also did some of the new expansions that came out for Titan Quest when Titan Quest, the action RPG that has been out for quite a while at this point, that when THQ or Nordic got the license to it, they released a couple of additional expansions. Pieces Interactive also did Magicka and Magicka 2, which if I think back in the early teens, Magicka was a multiplayer indie game that I remember getting some good buzz as well. So again, they were owned by Embracer, and it's the fact that I just said Alone in the Dark released and kind of flew under the radar and did not do very well in sales wise, even though it had a bigger budget and some Hollywood names behind it, with both David Harbour and Jodie Comer. in there, as well as as playing the main characters in that game. So it was definitely not the motion capture of it, which I'll talk about in my playlist piece. It couldn't have been cheap to put together, and to have it not perform well at a time when Embracer has been shutting down and selling off other games as studios. It's not a surprise, but it is also just one more in the list of closures over the course of this year.
And I've got the next studio closure for this week. This story over on Game Informer. Paradox Interactive closes Tectonic Studio the same week it canceled its first game, Life by You. This story by Wesley LeBlanc. Earlier this week, Paradox Interactive announced it was canceling Life by You, a simulation game meant to rival Sims, The Sims, in development at Paradox Tectonic, with Rod Humble, a lead designer on The Sims 2 and The Sims 3. Leading Tectonic fans were hopeful about Life by You, which was set to launch into early access earlier this month, before an indefinite delay. So the tail of the tape on this is, feel however you want to feel about Paradox. Like, they've, taken a whack at, this studio. I think another studio who, I can't remember what the game was that they did, but the two of them kind of had an acrimonious parting of ways, and that studio actually.
Yeah, this is Lamplighters League from last year.
So that studio actually.
Harebrained schemes.
Yes.
Studio.
Yeah, and they chose to just separate their relationship, so kind of in a Toys for Bob kind of style fashion, where they remained solvent as a business, but broke away from Paradox as a parent. Paradox, basically, their contention was like they kept looking at the game and seeing what the game was, and just kept feeling like it just wasn't meeting their expectations, right, in terms of quality, and what the game was going to do, and they felt that they were going to kind of lose out by putting the thing out there. So they made the decision to cancel the game, and they're going around doing the same kind of thing that a lot of other studios are doing as far as like tightening their belt and killing projects. I listened to an episode of GI Sprint this week, and I've recommended, if you're gonna read any gaming news today, I strongly recommend you read GameIndustry.biz. It is probably the last bastion of gaming journalism, in kind of the classic sense of the word, and I'm talking about like the old 1990s, 2000 kind of era journalism, where today, all journalism is essentially in the service of different fandoms. But if you're really looking for industry analysis and looking for, information and a real effort to kind of teach people about the industry, I highly recommend you watch GameIndustry.biz, or you read GameIndustry.biz. So their new podcast series called GI Sprint, which is slightly shorter format than their longer microcast. And really features, Christopher Dring and I think it's James Batchelor doing like panel interviews with different members of the industry. And in GI Sprint this week, they interviewed, Rami Ismail was one of the panel members, and I can't remember who the other two were, but they're from smaller indie developers. And a lot of them were talking about like the green lighting process and the prototyping process, and how. And one of the questions was, the topic of the talk was failing fast, and one of the questions was, when should you kill a project? And an IGN panel session also went live this week, between Christopher Dring, who now Game Industry Business, owned by the IGN family of media. It was back from Summer Game Fest, but he was interviewing Michael Pachter and Sean Layden and Bam, I can't remember her last name. But actually in either a follow-on interview or an interview that preceded that, where it was just Dring and Sean Layden, and Dring asked Layden, what was his recommendation like for smaller studios and stuff, and he said, I hate the morbidity of the soundbite, but Sean's response was strangle your darlings, right? And it's all about like not continuing to contribute resources to a thing that you're not sure is going to be a hit. And it was echoed in that episode of GI Sprint. They were, and all of those people were like, what is the answer to when you should kill a gaming project? And Dominique, again, I can't remember her last name, but her response was like, as soon as possible. right? And they all talked about these processes that they have where they do kind of jam sessions, they do prototyping, and it's like very short. It's like 2 weeks, and it's like, hey, if in 2 weeks I don't see where this thing is going, and I don't see this thing catching heat, then like we're killing it and moving on. So everybody's kind of in that mode now of conserving resources, and it's unfortunate, right, that this happens to that studio. But yeah, I think we're gonna see a lot more of that, as we go forward. I don't know, guys, any comments from you?
It's interesting. You mentioned about the like, when do you pull the plug? And I think they had this game's been in development since like 2019. So it's been a while, and they wanted to go early access. And I'm getting this from Wikipedia, so but it's been like 3 times that they've delayed the early access, and the third time was like earlier this month. So at some point, they I don't think they did this ahead of time. Like it wasn't like an early thing. I think they just finally faced up to reality that it wasn't gonna match its promise. I saw the trailer, and it didn't have the quirkiness. I mean, I guess they were going for a different vibe than The Sims, right? But it didn't really have as much of a. It felt very bland. But granted, I don't really play those types of games. But it's not like my genre. But it didn't even have like like a little bit of a hook. There's going to be some games, for example, in the direct that aren't typical genres that I play, but had enough of a hook that I would actually consider them. This one struck me as very mediocre. So after like that news, and it doesn't surprise me. It's one of the things.
Okay, let's go ahead and get into the Nintendo Direct, and we will go round robin. We'll go DBQ, me, Swiss. Let's go ahead and list off the games that caught your attention and made their ways onto your watch list.
All right, I'm gonna just start with Mario and Luigi Brothership. Honestly, like, I haven't played any of that kind of series of Mario and Luigi. That flavor of Mario games. So mostly because it's been like a 3DS thing, right? Like I don't remember the first
Started
one.
on the GBA. There were 2 on the DS, and then 2
So
more
it
on the
stretches
3DS.
back farther than I remember. But
Yep.
I knew they were all handheld, and I've never been a huge handheld gamer. So it's kind of something that like it'll be fresh to me, like a fresh experience. And the trailer just kind of looked good. I liked the way that they had Mario and Luigi interacting, and like, I watched it with my family, so it's like it was like the family event when we watched the direct. And the kids, for whatever reason, my kids really like Luigi. And just seeing the way that they presented Luigi in the trailer was good too. So that would be my first pick. Even though it was like right off the bat, it would also be one of my first picks for wish listed games.
Are your kids?
Go ahead. Sorry.
Are your kids Disney kids, Swiss?
Nah, they're just like Nintendo and Star Trek Stargate kids.
Okay.
I don't know that I've ever heard anybody describe themselves as a Stargate kid.
I got my 2-year-old like cheering for Teal'c. So
welcome to Enough to Keep Going, everybody.
If you choose to, Stargate goes very. I mean, it's as deep in lore as Star Trek. I think if you go down all those rabbit holes.
This game, as I will call out another game, but I just want to comment. Like, I came into this direct thinking that this was coasting mode, having conversations with my kids about this over the past week. Like, the fact that what they open with is not a remake, but a completely new game in this series. And this series always has a lot of charm, Swiss, as a fan of all of these games, at least the DS and the GBA ones. I think your kids would definitely enjoy them. They've got a good sense of humor. Treehouse in the localization has always done a really strong piece. My call out game, I'll go a little deeper cut and say that Fantasian Neo Dimension. Fantasian is a Mistwalker game. Sakaguchi, the creator or the lead on the original Final Fantasies, and then it also has the soundtrack and score was done by the original Final Fantasy composer as well. So this game came out on was when Apple Arcade launched. It was out on Apple Arcade and has been there since then. It has not gone to any place else. It's a very classic JRPG turn battle. The kind of charm of it is a lot of dioramas. That is, you're moving through the levels, and you don't necessarily see it this much in the trailer that GameLogIQ is showing here, but in the Apple Arcade, you definitely see the diorama aspect of it. So the art style really kind of is striking, but it's a good classic JRPG, and having it on something that's not my iPad is kind of nice.
Yeah, this game was also on my list too, and I mean there's a number of tales of the tape of this Nintendo Direct. Like one of the big overarching ones is, holy cow, there was a Nintendo Direct here going into the 8th year of the Nintendo Switch's life cycle, and it was not just like a dumping ground of titles. Like you would have thought this would have kind of been like the last vestiges of like the Sega, Genesis, like dying gasp of releases.
Clearing out the pipeline kind of thing, but I was surprised that there was this much in the pipeline.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the other big tail of the tape that for me, second tail of the tape was, I think there was a lot of focus on, from a lot of people who were looking at the showcase kind of in, I guess what I'll say is kind of the old model that we have stepped away from, which is this notion of like grading, right, the Nintendo Direct. And we're predominantly captured by the old titles. Not a ton of conversation going on around all the new titles, and there were a number of new titles showing up here. Again, lots of them were, the others were remakes or remasters or, like I said, remakes, but from the ground up remakes. But I think that was actually more of the story for the Nintendo Direct for me. Again, when it comes to the Nintendo Switch, a lot of the remakes were things coming off the Wii U, which I didn't own a Wii U, so they're still kind of, I hate to use the new to me approach, but the game. So this was one of the games that was on my list. The other one though was Fairy Tail 2. And that reminds me of like the third theme I wanted to bring up, which is lots of turn-based JRPGs in this Direct, maybe 4 or so. And I've mentioned, in other podcasts that it's a big year for turn-based. It's a big year for turn-based RPGs. In turn-based, I go all the way back to like the tail end of 2022 with Midnight Suns. And that trend has been continuing, and it rolls right into Baldur's Gate 3, which kind of just steamrolled the market. And it's continuing now with several turn-based JRPGs.
I think one of the, like, when they were introducing one of the games, they literally said like a new turn-based JRPG or a new turn-based RPG. And when I heard that, I thought of you, because you had like brought it up on last week's episode so directly. But yeah, it was I had the same thought as I was watching the Direct.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I hooked onto, right? Was everything that came across my radar that was a turn-based JRPG in this Direct, kind of immediately went on to my watch list. Swiss, what's your number 2?
Well, I'll say that I would have thought maybe Fairy Tail would have been exciting for my family. I would say, like, beyond those, like, we do watch a lot of anime, like Studio. If we're not Studio Ghibli, if you want to talk about like the cartoons, it'd be if you want to talk about Disney cartoons, we kind of gear toward the Studio Ghibli, so we have all of those, and I highly recommend them. But Fairy Tail, that one didn't actually click with me as much as the the first the one that DB mentioned, Fantasio, I think.
Yeah.
Even though like we used to like Fairy Tale a lot, and one of our cats is actually named Happy after the character in the series. But I would say that the second, I don't know, it's for me personally, I'm looking forward to Dragon's Quest, the Dragon Quest HD 2D remakes, just because I had so much fun with Octopath Traveler, and I really like that style going back. So again, with the turn-based JRPG theme and kind of the retro stuff, but that would be my number two. I haven't played. I was always a Final Fantasy fan, and I hadn't actually played much of the Dragon Quest series, so I kind of want to go back to some of like the. It'll be exciting to go back to the core roots.
So this game was announced, I think, in 2020. It feels kind of COVID. I remember watching the stream. There was a Dragon Quest announcement stream late at night in America because it was live in Japan. And having a date on it is great. Like, we knew this was coming. Having a solid date on it is excellent. And having the announcement that Dragon Quest 1 and 2 will also be getting HD 2D remakes is nice as well. I want to call out Wana's hot take there in terms of the fact that everything that was shown is going to be playable on Switch 2. I wouldn't really call that a hot take at all. I think that is exactly part of the value proposition here. So,
although I will say on Twitter, Linneman has John Linneman of Digital Foundry has asserted that that Metroid Prime 4, which I guess probably somebody will have in their list, is that what was shown was a Nintendo Switch game, not a Switch 2 game.
No, I think that's exact. I mean, I agree with that. I think it becomes the Zelda of this generation, right? Like, where Breath of the Wild bridged both generations and had two different SKUs. I could see Metroid Prime doing the exact same thing. So I'll take, since I just mentioned Zelda, why don't we, and Warawana mentioned it earlier in the chat, Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom. So the thing that I love about this one is that it takes the wonderful art style of the kind of diorama Link's Awakening from 2019 or so, and it kind of reapplies that for a different gameplay style. You are Princess Zelda. She has the Triforce of Wisdom, and so she has a wand that is duplicating things. You are using that to defeat enemies or to spawn ally enemies, to defeat those enemies, or to solve puzzles. I think it looks creative. It looks something a little different. That art style was a whole lot of fun, and that engine sat there for a while, so it was nice to see them do something with that engine that they had developed for the Link's Awakening remaster or remake.
That one was also very popular at my house, and my kids were excited because they're like, they can't wait to build armies of mobs, is how they were describing it. So I'm kind of intrigued about the gameplay style too. It looks like a fun direction that they're taking it.
So my number 3 was yet another turn-based JRPG. This one is a remake, if I understand this correctly. Romancing Saga 2: Revenge of the Seven. And so I don't know how much else to say about it.
It's definitely a remake, because there's a remaster out already on current systems, and so this is full on a remake.
I'm excited about this one too. Watch it.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and empty the magazines, and Swiss, just go ahead and do a rundown of any remaining titles you have on your watch list from the Nintendo Direct.
All right. Beyond Metroid Prime 4, I have probably the Ace Attorney game, because my wife and I know Ace Attorney is not the same as Layton, but like, just it's one of those quirky games that the two of us have kind of adopted as like a fun game that we can play together. And the one that I alluded to earlier, Tales of the Shire. I'm not like the Animal Crossing cozy life sim type guy. I don't for most of those I've not played it, but I'm I love J.R. Tolkien, and I actually think for a cozy life sim, it makes sense to put it in the Shire. Like that seems like a pretty obvious connection. Um, you know, now that it's been announced, so I'm still skeptical, like that it'll work, but like I got my eye on it as like a thing to try. So
Yeah, DBQ.
Game Logic, I will, since you're wearing the hat, I'll let you pull on the thread of the Capcom Marvel collection. But I mean, that's it. It's a Capcom Marvel collection, multiple different fighting games, both the Capcom versus Marvel, number of Marvel fighting games, but also kind of the first time that I'm aware of that the Punisher, the belt scroller Punisher, is coming out on a modern system. And that's a game that, while being a belt scroller, also has a soundtrack done by the composer of Kingdom Hearts and a number of other series. So it has some chops behind it.
Yeah, and to round out my list, I mean, that's the big thing about the Marvel versus Capcom. I think a lot of the dialogue has been about that it, has identified it as the fighting games, but it's not just the fighting games; it's the side-scrolling beat-em-up games as well too that are coming. But the remaining things on my list were Formagia, which I believe was another turn-based JRPG. I didn't pull up that video, but and lots of. I think another thing I should mention is lots of these. I mean, it was true of Summer Game Fest and all of the things that went on that weekend, but also true of this Nintendo Direct. Release dates just falling right off the like super tender baby back ribs, like meat just falling off the bone. Like the release calendar wasn't filled this year. It was a very unusual year. I don't think that people caught it, but like we got a deluge of games in 2023, and as we rounded the corner into 2024, it was very slow for the aggregate slate of the industry to really formulate. I think lots of people hyper focused on like one platform or another of the consoles. Like, no, like if you look at the industry, the slate this year was not nearly as solidified from a forecast perspective as 2023 was. 2024 has had a lot of instability in formulating, and if you then pick up the dynamic of the Summer Game Fest, like that, we talked last year how games were still popping on to the release calendar as late as like September. Like out of Gamescom, we got release dates for things that were dropping in like October and November when we thought our slates were already full. This year, things dropped in September that filled out the remaining slate for the year, and there were numbers of dates of things coming out in July, August, September, October, and the Nintendo Direct continued that. So Fantasia Neo Dimension out holiday 2024, Formagia out November 1, 2024, Donkey Kong Country, even though it's rounding the corner into next year, it's very early, it's January 16th, 2025, Dragon Quest 3 HD 2D Remake, November 14th, 2024, and that'll be followed by the HD 2D remakes of 1 and 2 next year. Metal Slug Attack Reloaded is already out. I think that was like a shadow drop. It was a shadow drop there. It launched 6/18/2024, getting good reviews on Steam right now because it's also on PC. The team here mentioned Metroid Zero. Oh, no. Let me walk that back. So on Nintendo Switch Online, on the subscription service, you're getting Metroid Zero Mission, which I think has already dropped and is available on the sub-service, DBQ?
I think so, yes. Yeah, you get there was an updates for both the GBA, because you get Zero Mission and Link's Awakening, but it also includes the Four Swords, the GBA version of those that came out in the early 2000s. Then you have Perfect Dark and Turok, but that is... It is for the Nintendo expansion, but not the N60. The Swiss, have you downloaded this, or have either of you downloaded this? Because it's a separate app that you download because it's the mature content N64 games. So it's not built in within the existing one.
Yeah, I haven't downloaded it. It'll be interesting that I assume there's some type of like parental control thing underneath that. Like if you have a kid's account that they can't just directly download it. I'm guessing. I don't know. But as DBQ mentioned, right, this is again, it's the 8th year of the Switch, and we're still getting like these incremental shards of like additional content into the services that are separated. This being the Nintendo Switch Online Mature 17 Plus collection. I haven't downloaded it yet, but yeah, like you said, Turok is in there. Super interesting that Perfect Dark is in there now after the new Perfect Dark was just shown at the Xbox showcase. DBQ mentioned Marvel vs. Capcom Fighting Collection. I mentioned Romancing Saga 2, and then Metroid Prime 4 Beyond, which is out sometime in 2025. And that kind of rounded out my list. So I had 12 titles off the show that I'm interested in kind of keeping track on. And that brings me to the next story, and I'll try and get through it very quickly. Sorry.
No, while you're doing that, I will call out some pieces in the chat here. So feel free to interrupt me as you go. Hero Down Under makes a really good point in terms of the fiscal quarters, that games are broken up into 4-month brackets. And that is definitely the case as they're thinking about investments in quarterly earnings reports, very much so. So good comment there, Hero. And welcome, even if you came in, you do not get a tardy slip this week. So...
yeah, that's Hero Down Under showing up. I wanted to do an update on one of the games that made my watch list from the Summer Games Fest, this Starship Troopers Extermination. So update 0.8.0 was part of the Future Game Show that was shown the Saturday evening of Summer Game Fest. That is actually out tomorrow. So this game has been in early access since May of 2023. It was expected that it was only going to be there for a year. An announcement that got made on the backside of the Future Game Show that I don't know that a lot of people picked up on is apparently Offworld, which is the studio that makes this game, also announced that they are leaving early access this fall and also launching console versions of the game. And so Starship Troopers Extinction will also be coming to PS5 and Xbox Series X and S on October 11th, 2024. So that heads us right into, I think that's Columbus Day weekend. What's in October? Maybe not that specific date, but somewhere in or abouts there. So this is obviously being, now kind of propped up as a Helldivers 2 competitor. The game is a little rocky right now. It had Steam community reviews up around 86%, very positive when it initially launched, but that has slipped back. That has backslid to 51%, largely on the heels of a migration from UE4 to UE5 that occurred last fall. They're still not really recovered from. But 0.8.0 drops, like I said, tomorrow. Coming in 0.8.0 are the implementation of weak points, and so the bugs will now have areas of their armor or areas of their bodies that are not covered by armor, which you will be able to pinpoint. So think of it as kind of like a VAT system from Fallout. In order to take the bugs down faster. They're introducing a whole new planet, Planet X11, which I quote is set in the Tabanus system with an arachnid quarantine zone. They're implementing Full Metal Jacket and Hollow Point ammo types, and they are implementing the Carnage system. So this was kind of the big thing from the show. If you watch that, in the Carnage system, bug bodies do not disappear. So up until now, you've shot them, killed them, and then the bugs have disappeared. Now they will persist, and so kind of like if you remember the movie, their bodies piled up, and then other bugs were able to walk like on top of them. So they could climb the walls of your defensive fortress based on walking on the bodies of their expired comrades. So those things are coming in this update. I haven't checked this out yet. The notions of instability and crashes and some things that people are seeing since the UE5 migration are causing me to probably hang back a little bit. But but I am interested in this. It did make my watch list. I may choose now to dip my toe in the pool, or I may wait until the 1.0 release, which is coming out this fall, which, I mean, this 0.8.0 update should tell us if we should have confidence. I mean, that 1.0 fall release was not said very loudly. I didn't catch up on it until I didn't know that was happening until I went and pulled the thread, because this thing hit my rotation of revisit time to go back and pull the thread on things on my watch list. So, you know, if 0.8.0 lands, it sticks the landing. That may give you confidence in the 1.0 release. So we will just have to see. I think I'm going to buy. It's a very, very quick note. Beyond Good and Evil Remaster is coming out next week by Ubisoft. That may give you hopes that they are still working on the sequel. Maybe, maybe not. I am not sure. You can take that as a vote of confidence or not of your own accord. So let's go ahead and get into segment 3, and I guess we'll kind of go rapid fire to try and get out of here near time, although we might go a little bit over. DBQ, you were first in the hopper.
Yeah, so I alluded to it when I had my news story around Alone in the Dark and the developer closing there. So I played Alone in the Dark. I played it only because I had a $1 for a month of GameFly. So thank you very much, GameFly, because otherwise I probably would have forgotten that this game released. It looks pretty good. You know, it's not in that kind of RE engine. Like, you can tell that I played it on PlayStation 5, looks solid. The motion capture is pretty good for the actors, but it feels, it is not quite AA, not quite AAA, right? It's kind of in that in-between state. You can tell that this was a big swing for that developer, and it also is effective in what it's trying to do. Alone in the Dark is a early 90s computer game, right? Like, it is pre-Resident Evil. It is very much atmospheric, which is more my style of a horror game. Love a atmospheric Silent Hill over a action shooter, Dead Space or Resident Evil. And it, not knowing anything about this game, and it has some real kind of omnipresent atmosphere, mood. You don't know what's coming around a corner. When you do get to enemies, they're not super scary, but also you have a pretty limited supply of ammo. Well, you have lots of ammo. You have a relatively limited supply of types of guns. And so I found a ton of ammo, and it's got, one of the things I liked about it is that in addition to kind of the atmosphere, it is much more in a puzzle solving mode and kind of story building, narrative building. As you're going through and reading a lot of things, you can see the kind of the adventure game aspects, the lineage there in it, but it sets mood really well. And it does some really nice things with accessibility. So as you start the game, you can talk about challenge, whether it's to the puzzles or to the combat, so you have that ability to kind of modify those things a little bit. And that's a nice accessible piece here. Again, it's one of those where when I find it at $20, I might come back to it. I've enjoyed what I played of it, but I also can see where it didn't necessarily land because of its kind of dated, not necessarily game mechanics, because it feels good as it plays, but just the kind of general structure of it is a much slower paced game than what most horror games are nowadays.
Okay, my next game in the rundown is a combo entry of War Thunder and World of Warships. I won't get into World of Warships too much, other than to say that I've re-onboarded to that series. I'm surprised that the statistics Steam spit back at me of how much time I've spent in that game after having laid off for so long. I will say it's interesting that apparently a rule change that went in at some point while I was away is that the way it used to work was if you were in a battle and you got taken out, and then you left the game because you didn't want to sit around in spectator mode, that ship used to be unavailable to you, so you couldn't turn around and re-enter it in the next match until the match it was involved in had ended. they have removed that. So now, if you take a battleship right into a fight, and you get taken out, you can immediately recycle that same battleship into a follow-on match. I did onboard back to War Thunder, and apparently I onboarded before, although I don't really remember having done so. I just remember there's been some weird thing where like I was locked out of my account because it didn't work on a PC, and then on one PC, and then whenever I went to another PC and tried to log in, it would never. So whatever, it seems to have resolved itself. It's been like that literally for years. But I went back today, and although I originally enlisted in the aircraft mode of the game, I went into the naval fleet mode of the game. I guess you've kind of got to do this thing where you have to play some entry level matches and kind of get the hang of things, and then you unlock mode. So I know I just unlocked there's an arcade mode and a realistic battle mode, and then there's a simulator battle mode. So I just unlocked access to the realistic battle mode. Hero Down Under asks, Logic is World of Warships that good? I would like to try it on PS5. I don't know. So for me personally, just being a larger, probably PC gamer, I don't know that it's the type of game that I would play on a console. I think I originally had an idea that I was going to play World of Tanks. I can't remember what the console version is, but the simplified versions on console I don't find particularly engaging. But your mileage may vary. I like World of Warships, even if you're not gonna commit to it. It's just and again, I have multiple things in my background that make World of Warships something that I heavily relate to. All the way back to just being a big Star Trek fan, right? So, but I went with War Thunder as well, so I'm playing War Thunder and World of Warships now, and I'm really excited by kind of what I'm seeing. I haven't interfaced with the monetary part of it. There's apparently both battle passes and premium. On World of Warships, you don't have battle passes, you have premium. And on other games, typically you have battle passes, but this is weird that you have both. But I like what I've seen so far. It's a little more complex than what World of Warships has in terms of buttons, whistles, and levers that it makes available. It's not as simplified as World of Warships, and so it's just going to be interesting. There's separate hull, fire, and flooding damage, and separate repair parties for each that are all on their own timer. And different things in the game can invoke flooding damage, which is is its own thing. I will say, I think the first few matches you're up against bots just like you are in World of Warships with all human players on your team. People are World of Warships has a little more naval etiquette kind of around it. People tend to not run over you as they're trying to get to targets. That is not the case in World of Warships. Are in War Thunder. In both of those games, when you were zoomed in the binocular view, you can't see other ships that are maneuvering around you. In World of Warships, there is an etiquette that you periodically pop out of that view so that you don't collide with other players. I've been hit twice already in War Thunder, so apparently that is not as much of a thing there. But I'm having a good time and looking forward to. I originally went after War Thunder to replace my kind of online aircraft multiplayer type game after I was dissatisfied with World of Aircraft, and so I'm starting in naval fleet battles, but eventually I'll pop over and try out tanks and airplanes as well. So I'm interested to see how that goes. Swiss, you've been on a card battler?
Sorry, I played a little bit more Balatro. It's addictive in that way, but it's also just the pace is nice, and that you can save your run and continue it, which is I found nice. I feel like I'm a little bit constrained by the number of jokers that you can have. There's ways you can, and the jokers are one of the primary means by which you can power up and really increase the chips you get per hand. It's kind of you start with 5. You have 5 slots. You can increase that, but I guess that's part of the challenge. So I'm still playing with that. It hasn't been where I feel like I'm unfairly challenged. I'll earn when I do well, it's earned. Despite being a roguelike. Quick one follow up with World of Warships, because you're the one that got me to play it, so I was surprised to see it pop up again on Steam for you. As far as like PC versus console, I don't really remember playing Dreadnought. I think you got me to play it like one time on like PS3, but I remember, I think we played it on console, and I don't remember how they compared as far as like mechanics.
Yeah, I was about to deny that, but then I think I can remember playing once with like a gamepad. Yeah, but I mean, same thing. Like I like it, for me personally, I just like those types of games. And I mean, it's what it brings up, what it evokes is my feelings of that I mentioned last week with Shin Megami Tensei 5 Vengeance, that all of those games just have a complexity of like getting around the UI, just in terms of like presenting you lots of information and being in that OODA loop of like having to process a little bit of information and then make a decision and then process, like that type of interaction just to me doesn't lend me to kind of want to play games, you know, like that on console. But you know, like that could easily be because of my particular taste. Obviously, tons of people play those games on console, so it'll probably be just fine, you know, if anybody else wants to go down that route. Last little bit thing I'll mention is I have also been continuing to play Eiyuden Chronicle, although I've put it away in the backlog for now. But at the beginning of this week, I was kind of wrapping up, you know, my several hours of play that I was into it. I've gotten kind of past like the initial kind of onboarding and have gotten really into the meat of the campaign and seeing like the first kind of fantasy, you know, the world building, you know, I've been exposed to. There's a lot of things about the game that I like. There are a lot of things about the game that aren't great, particularly like as you're transiting the map and like little quality of life stuff, like the map not always staying in north up, you know, and rotating, and you having to like fix in your mind like the relative motion direction of where you're heading versus like the standard north up map, and you know, little things like that. There's a lot that the game doesn't tell you. Just a kind of tutorial and onboarding. You get given characters and you put them in the back row, and then you're watching them in combat, and you're like, that dude's not like attacking anything, and he's like, oh, he can't attack from the back row. I got to put him in the front row. So there are things like that that you know make the thing interesting. For a large chunk of the game, I think I've gotten into a paradigm now where, you know, if it's kind of hash and trash enemies, random encounters that I find on the map, I'll just leave it in kind of auto battler mode, and then right when it's a big battle, then I'll take more manual control. There are little things that I don't know if they're just me. Like I said, like yesterday, I was frustrated at Megacopter because I swore you couldn't like defeat like aerial drones, you know, but I found out it was me. I had missed a critical part of training and not pulling the left trigger. So maybe these are things in Eiyuden Chronicle that I'm missing. But as far as I know, like it appears to me, like when you're attacking like an enemy, particularly like a boss or a mini boss, like I don't see any kind of life meter on them. So I was involved in this really big, huge boss battle with what is his name? Nethris or something like that. And I'm like, I have no idea. Like this is a battle that went on for like 30 minutes. Like
Swiss and I are just smiling because that's a very classic like 90s JRPG trope. Like you have no idea.
Octopath Traveler does it too, and like the boss battles really ramp up in their HP. So like you have to use this. There's going to be a spell or something to scan the enemy to find out, but you don't want to have to waste one of your turns on that. So
yeah. So but I had a great time with the battle. It was very harrowing. It's like I wound up taking him down with like a character that has a not a very powerful attack actually, and it was a very casual like takedown. But I was like out of health potions. I was like you know, if it hadn't happened then, I probably would have been fighting that battle over. So you know, little things like that. But I'm having a fun time with the game. I am into the part of the game where I am starting to build like my 100 heroes in Fire Emblem kind of fashion. So it's interesting. I would have probably never anticipated, you know, 5 years ago when I was on my Star Citizen grind, that this show would have ever been one that I'd have been coming on talking about me playing JRPGs. But but at least there's a slice of the genre that I've found and gotten a hook into. Up next for me, I'm going to be continuing to play some more World of Warships and probably looking at comparisons between World of Warships and War Thunder. DBQ, how about you?
I picked up Fall Aces this week, or at least it's an early access game. I read about it online, and it looks like a 1940s kind of graphic novel, Dick Tracy kind of style, but is a first-person immersive sim to some degree. So be curious to kind of play around with that a little bit.
And Swiss?
Princess Peach Showtime has been ordered and is in the mail. So that's probably this week sometime.
Nice. No big releases that I've noticed coming out this week. There's something coming out. I forget what it is that's not like in my wheelhouse, but pretty quiet this week as far as what I've looked at from the new releases list. But thanks a lot, everybody, for joining in tonight. My apologies for running over. Sorry, gentlemen, for keeping you 10 minutes over time. Tune in next week when Tau Master theoretically will be in the seat, and DBQ and I will be backing him up. Like I said, thanks so much for anybody joining in. For anybody who watched for everybody who came in to watch the live stream tonight, we appreciate you. Hero Down Under, Warwana, thank you, Enate. For anybody who happens to watch the archive version of this episode on the E2KG Network podcasting channel on YouTube, we appreciate you as well. Please take time and feel free to like the video and subscribe to the channel so you can just receive a notification whenever we post new content. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Stay safe out there. Play the games that you like. Come here to talk to us about the games that you love. Once again, my name has been GameLogIQ for the Rounding Off Infinity Gaming channel on YouTube. Here with my co-hosts tonight, DBQ Hams and Swissguard. Until next time, good night, good luck, and good gaming. That's going to do it for us. We're out of here.